Section 15.3, seventh chord symbols. So just like triads, seventh chords have shorthand symbols, and a lot of the elements below will look familiar to you. So when seventh chords are in their most basic form, when they're in root position, the symbols look like this if we take C as an example. So let's tackle these one by one. The fully diminished seventh chord uses a lowercase letter, the degree sign, which you already associate with the diminished quality, and to tell us that it's a seventh chord, the superscript 7. So if I were to take D as an example, lowercase d, degree sign, and the superscript 7 for fully diminished seventh chords. Now for half diminished seventh chords, you still keep the lowercase letter, you keep the superscript 7, but now you use this symbol. So it's like a degree sign with a slash going through it. So it's as if that degree sign is being cut in half for half diminished. So if I were to use D as an example again, lowercase d, degree sign with the slash going through it, and that superscript 7 for half diminished. For minor, all you need is a lowercase letter and then the superscript 7 to tell you that it's a minor seventh chord, for instance, as opposed to a minor triad. So if I took D as an example, just lowercase d, superscript 7, that's enough to tell us that we're dealing with a minor seventh chord. Now this next one you'll want to pay special attention to. The dominant seventh chord is the most frequently encountered seventh chord. It happens all the time. And because it happens all the time, it gets a fairly brief symbol. In fact, it just gets the capital letter with the 7 as a superscript. So if I were to do it with D, capital D, and superscript 7. It's really important not to confuse this with the major seventh. I know that it looks like, a capital letter, which we already associate with the major triad, for instance, but just trust that when you have this very short symbol, capital letter and superscript 7, it is dominant. Now, the final one, the major seventh chord, it doesn't happen as frequently as dominant seventh chord, so it gets a little bit more of a complicated symbol. So it gets the capital letter, and it also gets a superscript capital M along with the superscript 7. So it's just emphasizing that that's a major seventh chord as opposed to a dominant. So if I were to write it with a D, capital D, superscript M, superscript 7. All right, let's do the next exercise together. Here we're just supposed to, in this second column, write the symbol given these chord names. And these chord names, of course, are involving letters and words and numbers and so forth. So, D, dominant seventh. Well, dominant seventh, we remember it's one of the big ones, right? But it's not major. Yeah, dominant is the most common type of seventh chord, so it just gets this symbol, capital letter with a superscript 7. Now, what about the F half diminished seventh? Well, that's on the small side, right? So we certainly need a lowercase letter. And, it's that half diminished thing, right, where we put the degree sign, but we put a slash through it, and we need that superscript 7. Next one, G major seventh. The major seventh is not as common as the dominant seventh, so it has a slightly longer set of symbols here. So capital G for sure, and then you also need that superscript M and the superscript 7. Next one, A flat minor seventh. Well, that's a fairly simple symbol, right? We go for the lowercase letter, so lowercase a flat, and then the superscript 7. Next up, F sharp fully diminished seventh chord. So that's a small type of seventh chord, so lowercase letter, and it's F sharp. And we need the degree sign, and we need the number 7. Now, this is just a review question, of course. F major triad, well, that's still going to be just a capital F, no number 7 or anything. Because it does not have the number 7, it tells us that we're dealing with just a regular old triad. Now, let's go into number 2. This is going to be an important bit of training, as you go on to some of the later sections in this chapter. This just teaches you to look at a symbol and then pronounce the name of the seventh chord. So let's do these one at a time. Looks like we've got a lowercase e. We've got that half diminished sign, right? And we've got the number 7. So you would pronounce this as E half diminished seventh. Next up, this is the one to be careful of, I know that on the surface it looks like it could be major, but remember, dominant is way more common than major. So this one is a G dominant 7th chord. Next one, we just have a lowercase letter and the superscript 7, so that's a B minor 7th chord. Next, we do actually have that superscript M here, so this is definitely a major 7th, so we would call it an A flat major 7th chord. Next one, lowercase with a degree sign and the number 7, so E flat fully diminished 7th chord. And just as an aside, you'll hear a lot of musicians also refer to fully diminished 7th chords as simply diminished 7th chords. They're one and the same, so just be aware of that. And the last one, this is a bit of review, right? Capital letter, but with a plus sign. There's no 7 or anything. So this is just a triad, right? This is a G augmented triad.